Welcome to Both Sides, a podcast between a film industry insider and an outsider to get their unique perspectives on movies. I'm your host, Andrew Heilman. I'm the owner of a production company, a camera operator, editor, and film student. Today, my guest is my friend Michael, and we'll be watching Tropic Thunder. Stay tuned till the end to hear our final reviews of the film. And in case you need a refresher or you just have never seen it, here's the story in a nutshell. In Tropic Thunder, a group of difficult Hollywood actors travel to Vietnam to film a big war movie. But after the production starts falling apart, the director drops them into the jungle to secretly capture quote-unquote realistic reactions when the actors unknowingly wander into territory controlled by actual drug traffickers. By the end, the actors realize the threat is real and work together to rescue one of their cast members from the criminals, and eventually escaping and becoming heroes when the footage is turned into a successful film. Now, let's talk about this movie.
You want to know a movie that you need to watch if you haven't seen it? Since you've seen some like real quote unquote, like obviously that Russian one was real, but like real quote unquote war movies. If you haven't seen it, you need to see Saving Private Ryan.
Oh man, I've seen it before and I was rewatching it the other day, or attempting to rewatch it. That movie is incredible. In fact, I think hearing about some behind the scenes after Saving Private Ryan came out, they the creators were interviewing. The Spielberg and his team and everyone were showing it to actual World War II veterans who experienced the storm on Omaha Beach, and they said that the only thing that was wrong or inaccurate about it was that there wasn't enough blood. That everything else was like exactly how it was when they experienced it.
Yeah, and you want to know the craziest part about the Omaha Beach and the whole D-Day landing in general?
What?
The Germans put up the defense they did with a skeleton crew. That was like the weakest point and the weakest like link of the entire like line of defense, and it was that weak because they spent months beforehand feeding them false information about where the landing was actually going to be. So a predominant amount of the force left that area to go to fortify where they thought it was going to be. So they literally hit a purposely weakened area, and it was still that much of a bloodbath.
Wow.
So like it would have probably been basically impermeable if it was at full strength.
Yeah, war's no joke.
Yeah, it was not a good time for anyone involved. I've heard a lot of the German perspective recently for some reason about that, and the Germans in command of that defense on D-Day, as the hours were going by, were literally writing about how it was a flood of people that they did not have the ammo, the personnel, or anything. So they're like writing goodbye letters to like the other command and their families and everything, because from their perspective, they are literally being like ran down by the demons. You know what I mean? From their perspective, the bad guys are running them down. So they're writing all these like horrible like notes about like they're being killed by the demon flood that they can't prevent from like just wiping them away, that like no matter how many belts of ammunition they put in their machine guns and empty into the flow of bodies, it never halted them at all, and we were an indomitable force. They didn't care about how many lives they threw into the blender just so long as we made landfall.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, that has to be probably the greatest war movie, Saving Private Ryan. I can't think of.
Yeah.
There's several good ones. There's that one. There's Hacksaw Ridge, I think, is really good. The new All Quiet on the Western, the original All Quiet on the Western Front, I heard was really good. But then there's a new one that came out. That one was supposed to be really. I watched it and it was really good.
Black Hawk Down is a really good
That
modern
one I haven't seen yet. Black Hawk Down I haven't seen yet. I should
I
definitely
would
see
love
it.
to watch that with you sometime, bro.
Same thing with American
would be
Sniper.
so
I
fun.
haven't seen either.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one. That would be cool. There's another one, a World War II movie called Fury, which is like real specialized to a tank crew, like an American tank crew of a Fury Sherman tank, which is a Sherman with a 76 millimeter cannon on top instead of the normal 74 millimeters, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that extra 2 millimeters allows like 200 meters of more penetration, so they could actually penetrate the tanks that they were fighting. Because the original Shermans that showed up in Germany were completely incapable of battling the armor of the German armor. It would take like 6 Shermans to take out a Tiger.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in tanks at all, Fury is a really good one. I think it has Brad Pitt in it.
Yes, I think that is true. And Brad Pitt's a pretty good actor.
Yeah.
He's got some good stuff going. But in terms of this movie that we just watched, I know that you're like a borderline gunsmith. Like you have a lot of knowledge about guns. So I guess I wanted to start with saying, which guns would they have used in the Vietnam War? Would they just be standard issued like assault rifle, MK16s or whatever?
It was the M16A1, I believe, was the battle rifle that was given to the Marines of Vietnam. And what they had in this movie was pretty accurate, with the Vietnamese having like AKs and shit like that because they were funded by the Soviets. They might have had some of their own guns, like, and shit like that, but it was mostly funded by the Soviets, so they had a lot of Russian equipment and stuff like that. So as you've seen in the movie, all the AK variants and whatnot, it's pretty accurate for the Viet Cong to have. On our side, we had a lot of M16A1s and like M60s. With the pistol that fucking Portnoy took out of his goddamn panties at the end there was the M1911. So like that's a pretty accurate to what we would have had out there. So I mean, all the equipment, the helicopters, they were, Vietnam era Huey helicopters. So the actual name I don't know of what they are called. They're not like the Black Hawks, obviously, but they were like the original version of the Black Hawks. I think they might just literally be called Hueys. I'm not sure. Like
Right.
Huey dash UE, or it's like Huey dash UED 16 or something like that. Just using War Thunder knowledge. I don't know if you know anything about that game, but it has pretty accurate shit on it. Not to say it's 100% accurate, but it's pretty damn accurate.
Yeah, I haven't. I think I've played that game maybe once or twice, but I probably should play more of it. I remember having fun with it when I was playing it. But I mean, it just goes to show that even though they were making obviously a parody satire kind of movie, they did put some thought, and I'd argue a lot of thought, behind the script and the equipment that they'd use, and trying to replicate that time period and all that kind of stuff. I don't know if they actually shot in Vietnam or around that area on location. They probably shot somewhere closer to Hawaii, because I know there's a specific family that owns an estate out in Hawaii. It's like 100 acres or whatever, and they rent it out to Hollywood to make their movies in it, so that they don't have to fly to Asia in order to make their movies. So I'm guessing it was probably somewhere in Hawaii. If they didn't shoot on location, if they did shoot on location, that would be pretty crazy. But
Those looked like Vietnam jungles is one of the things I did notice in there. Is like that's what it would look like when you were going over these things. That's why, for one, us dropping napalm on it, Vietnam was so devastating. Because if you've seen those canopies, you've seen it. They barely. If you were under that tree coverage, it would probably look like nighttime to you. Like it's very dense forest. So, like, what you've seen there is very accurate. Like, even with helicopters, you had to find a little clearing or something to be able to land, and then usually the Viet Cong would have trapped the absolute shit out of that. So, you get out and you fall into punji sticks and shit.
Yes.
Very, very dangerous. The forest was probably the Viet Cong's biggest ally and was probably our biggest enemy, more than the Viet Cong ever could be, or the Russians or anything, because it's a special kind of hell to fight in a swampy forest.
Right.
Because that's what Vietnam is, a swamp forest. Think about how awful that would be to be in combat in when you've never been in that kind of environment before.
Yeah, it's humid and it's 110 degrees, and yeah, it's crazy.
And you're fighting a force which is extremely familiar with that entire area. So you are an invading force going someplace you've never fought before. It's an extremely hostile environment, and it's an extremely hostile environment, and you have no idea. You're fighting a force that is just like so familiar with the situation and the way that it will drain us, that they purposely use it as a way to attack us. Really, like, they knew that we wouldn't know anything about the animals. They knew we wouldn't know anything about the foliage. They knew what would look normal to us but would look obvious to them, in ways to set up traps and shit like that. We really stood no chance in the way that we went about it.
Google AI is telling me that Tropic Thunder was filmed primarily on the Hawaiian island of Kauai, but also a lot of its jungle scenes in places were shot on Kauai Ranch, and Kauai Ranch is the ranch I was talking about, where it's the estate that it's an independent estate, I think, that a family owns, 4,300 acres of private land, and that's where they shot Jurassic Park and Jurassic World and The Descendants and a bunch of other movies. So they did a really good job of making it look like it was Vietnam, though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised that they were able to do that. I have a real good, like, suspension of disbelief. So it's not hard to convince me of we're on location, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
But just based off of honestly, out of all the wars, I'm probably the least knowledgeable about Vietnam. So my understanding of Vietnam is that would be what you're dealing with, basically like a jungle swamp.
Right.
And that's what it looked like to me. It looked like a jungle swamp is what we were dealing with there, and I thought that was pretty accurate.
Yeah, I mean, it convinced
in terms of its looks.
It convinced me too. The only reason I'd think it wouldn't be shot in Vietnam was that it would be a Hollywood thing of money and shipping everyone to Asia and customs and all that kind of stuff. So it makes more sense for them to do what Jurassic Park did, which was shoot in Hawaii, which they did end up doing. So that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, that does make sense.
What was your favorite scene of the movie that you can remember?
My favorite scene was that first scene that studio head was in the Tom Cruise's character.
Yeah.
And Tom Cruise's character in the movie is just probably my favorite character in the whole movie. He is so funny. Everything he does, his crash outs are so good. But yeah, that first one where he like kind of, not the very first one when he comes up on the webcam, although seeing him in the webcam, like looking closer, trying to see the guy in the background was really funny too. But when you see him like as like Ben Stiller's character, I'm pretty sure, as his agent came in the first time to talk to the studio head about like about like the fact that he's like kidnapped or whatever, although he didn't know that.
Yeah.
That crash out because of the phone call and the way he ended it and all, that was my favorite scene. That was so funny. I cracked up hard at that. That was my
Yeah. Tom Cruise he's a very interesting character because on one side you have, the Scientology, all that stuff. And then he's done a bunch of really weird movies and he's not my favorite. But then you have gems of like Mission Impossible and then like this movie and like Top Gun. I haven't seen him really commit to being a caricature as much as he has in this movie, and he does a really good job of just fully committing to the crash outs and everything.
Yeah, Tom Cruise as a like person, like as a character, is real strange. Like he's on the same level of strange, like even more strange, honestly, than Mel Gibson. And Mel Gibson to me is on a strange level of strange.
Right.
I just feel like he's he's a little bit crazy, and I think anyone has to be successful in things that they endeavor in at this level. Making the passion and shit like that. But Tom Cruise, when it comes to like Scientology, like I just don't even like how does someone as successful as him, handsome, like devilishly handsome, dude literally owned the entire women fucking population when
Yeah.
Top Gun came out, bro. Like, and then he's a fucking actor, so he has fucking hundreds of millions of dollars, with multiple successful ongoing entire movie series. How long has Mission been out? Like, how many have there been?
9. Well, there's
9?
been 9, I think, 9 or 10 Mission Impossible movies, but I think they started in 93, 94.
Jesus Christ, longer than I've been alive. Like, I've been alive for a long time. Like,
Yeah, and he's still making them.
so yeah, so like how does that guy get pulled into something like Scientology? Like, I just don't. I have went into Scientology. I have listened to people who have like escaped it, who went on JRE and their own little interviews and stuff like that on their own because I was so captivated by Scientology. But like most of the people who get caught up into this is like your normal standard like housewife who just wants their kids to be like taken care of, and Scientology offers community and all this kind of stuff, and it's she gets sucked in like that. Bro, you are a millionaire actor, at least millionaire. I keep wanting to say billionaire, but I don't know.
Definitely tens of millionaire, if not hundreds
Yeah,
of millions.
yeah, exactly. So you are like one of the most successful people on the planet. What the fuck are you doing in Scientology?
I mean, maybe
How
that's
did you
why
end
he
up
does
here?
it. Maybe that's why he does it. Maybe he has nothing better to do than to explore a religion. That makes weird sense.
And if that is the case, then okay, fine. But that's what I want to know is I gotta understand how. Because
Well, he's
otherwise
such an
it
enigma
doesn't.
because he also
Yeah, it
does
doesn't
his
make
own
any
stunts.
sense.
He's this weird
Yeah.
character who does all of his own stunts, hanging out of airplanes, and it's how does that guy become the guy that gets swindled by Scientology and all of its? It's just weird.
No, I agree. As a character, I don't know how much more interesting, let's say, it can get in terms of acting. I'm sure that there is probably other crazy actors and stuff like that with weird beliefs and
Well,
backstories,
they're
but
they're
like,
all crazy, and that's kind of one of the main points of this movie when it comes to identity is that these in order to be in this business, you need to have a extreme lack of an identity so that you can try to convince other people that your identity is aligned with these characters that you're playing and this title that you have as director or cinematographer or whatever. I mean, that's the whole point of Kirk Lazarus or Robert Downey Jr.'s character. That's what that character's saying about society is that you in that business you need to lose every sense of yourself in order to be good at it. And sometimes you got to recognize who you are, and it, losing yourself trying to do that job, compromising your morality, your values, your desires, your wishes, your accomplishments, all in the sake of trying to convince other people that those aren't what you want and you want other things in a movie and in a story, can be really damaging. And you see that with some of these actors like Marlon Brando or whatever, or these method actors. They call it the method. It's a method of acting that comes from, I think, Russia and the 30s or 40s or 50s, somewhere around there. But Marlon Brando popularized it. He's the guy that played Don Corleone in The Godfather. But the method is basically acting has had different shapes and forms over the history of cinema. Originally, acting it came from theater, it came from plays. And acting then was very expressive. It was very loud because you had no microphones, and in a giant auditorium, you need to speak loud enough to where your voice carries. So that's where we get like this theatrical kind of acting where it's all over the top. You're making big movements so that people in the far back can see you. There's no such thing as subtle acting in in plays, at least back then. So you have that style of acting when film gets created in the silent film era because you need to be able to communicate with your body language because you have no dialogue to carry the story. And then dialogue gets introduced, and for the first 5-6 years of Hollywood, you still have that over theatrical, overacting that's very one dimensional. And then you get people like Marlon Brando that come in that bring a subtle realism into it. You bring cinematographers in who start becoming really close with cameras with long telephoto lenses so you can really see the emotion on people's faces and you're not so far back so that you can capture the entire scene. Like the technique of acting and filmmaking has improved so much from what it used to be that the method acting, when you do it to the level that Christian Bale does it when he for The Machinist weighs like 80 pounds, going on a diet of tuna and water for 6 months, and then a few years later, like 3 or 4 years later, he does Batman Begins and becomes Batman and puts on 100 pounds of muscle, and then he puts on 100 pounds of fat to do The Vice in 2019, around there, somewhere around there. That level of commitment to your role has consequences to your bodily functions. And that's where the real art form of acting comes in play because it's the sacrifice of your entire being for the sake of your art. And I felt like that was really well portrayed in this, potentially really controversial decision of making Robert Downey Jr. play a person playing an African American. I don't know. What do you think about that character and in that decision?
well, art is art, and um, it's up to the intention of that art. I feel like they did a as good of a job as you can possibly do casting a character like that. I also think that Robert Downey Jr. did everything he should have done when being offered a role like that. He consulted like everyone he could and respected in the business, including people like Samuel Jackson and stuff like that, and they all pushed for and like heavily pushed for him to take the role. So in terms of like whether or not it should have been done or not, you can always say that no, it shouldn't have been done, but people are going to do things that you don't want people to do. And if they are going to do things no matter what, like you can't stop them, then how did they do it? I think they did it just about as good as you could possibly do it. It didn't seem offensive to me at any point, and when it was, there was an actual black actor right there to point it out and call him out on his bullshit, which happened several times in the movie. So,
Right.
I mean, I think that character, almost his entire character in the movie was to call him out on being a fake black person. So it's almost like, whereas you can say, well, that took away a character's role in the movie that Robert Downey Jr. was. It could have been a black person. Yeah, but then they created a whole to specifically call him out for being a black person in a movie, taking the role of a black person. So you know what I mean? So even that argument isn't really still solid. Am I sitting here saying like, oh, this was a must needed the thing do thing? You know, whatever. I don't really care. But it was done as well as it possibly. Now, the decision of whether or not it should have been done is not mine to make, or really do I have any opinion on it at all? I don't really. I don't also care to either, because like, as far as I know, Robert Downey Jr. isn't racist. If he does say something racist or something like that, and he turns out he is, then all I'd have to do is see that, and then I'd be like, oh, okay, so he's racist, and that completely changes the dynamic of what's going on. But until I see something like that, I'm not going to assume he's racist because he did blackface for a movie that he was cast in, that he got permission from everyone he respected in the business.
You're 100. I 100% agree that it's all about intent. Everything is about intent. Every argument that you get into, every position someone takes, every point you try to make, if the intent, like this is the whole thing with political debates, unfaithful political debates, is that yes, you could be right as part of an opposition or something, but if your intent is to dehumanize and villainize and demonize your opponent, then that doesn't help your case at all. In fact, it hurts your case. And the fact that this movie is very clear on poking fun at everybody. It pokes fun at it's very similar to South Park, and I've been watching a bunch of South Park with my brother. It pokes fun at the entire film industry. It pokes fun at producers. It pokes fun at directors, actors. It's a very self-aware meta movie that it takes a lot of courage to make a character like that, and movies should get recognized when they do it really well. And in fact, I think Robert Downey Jr. was nominated for Best Supporting Actor for an Oscar for his role in Tropic Thunder, which he deserves because he took a potentially controversial character, and basically saved it. Like, I don't think one of the justifications of whether or not someone should win an Oscar for something is that could someone else have done this job better? So like, no one could play Han Solo like Harrison Ford, right? So like there's certain positions that can only be done a certain way by a certain person, and I don't think anyone could have done what Robert Downey Jr. did as well as he did it, because Robert Downey Jr. is an actual actor. He's not like a B movie kind of whatever actor. He did Chaplin, which is a really good movie. He got nominated for an Oscar for that. That was in 92 or 93, something like that. That was a biopic about Charlie Chaplin, and he did a great job in it. Same thing with Oppenheimer. In fact, Oppenheimer, in my opinion, is the best movie to be made in the 2020s so far that I've seen, and he won the Oscar for the role he had in Oppenheimer. So I don't know. I think I agree. The intent was right, and they did it. I couldn't have done it better myself, and you know, I agree with you that whether or not it should be done in the first place, I don't know. I think honestly, it you need to do things that push the medium forward. You need to do things that are risky, and are innovative and creative, especially in art. And I think this movie accomplished that with that character. In fact, I don't think any movie has ever come close, and probably will ever come close again, to what that movie was trying to say with that character.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. I that's what I'm saying. Is like the only thing I could say is like when I watch it, when I see it, it doesn't offend me. But I also am a privileged white man, so like I don't have the same vulnerabilities, I guess, to getting outraged by seeing something that should offend me. Like the few things that they did about white guys, especially fat white guys. I mean, look at what they did to my boy Jack Black. It was awful. He was literally strung up on a bull and spanked in front of a bunch of Vietnamese people. All right, like look. But you don't see me crying about what they did to my boy Jack Black, so
It's pretty funny. There's
yeah, so it was a really funny movie with a really deep message that they never. I wanted to bring this up real quick because I just thought about this.
Yeah, go ahead.
It was a really funny movie. It was set up to be a comedy, obviously, and it was a comedy the entire time. And the message that they had was there, but it wasn't preachy in any way, shape, or form. And it was still, it felt like a comedy movie the entire time. Like, but what I wanted to say is that, like, the message also that it does have is pretty damn deep. Like you were saying earlier, like, method acting specifically, that idea of completely erasing yourself to become a character so that way you can do your job at that level, specifically on the level of someone like Christian Bale, who is adopting it to that extent to go from a 90-pound character to Batman to whatever Christian Bale does after that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, is just so like that is in my opinion at least like you can say everything you want about how much skill it takes to make normal acting do well, especially in nowadays because it's been done for so long and everything, and you would be absolutely right in that opinion. But for me personally, nothing comes close to watching an actor who does their acting through method acting, and
Right.
the ones who really adopt it. I don't know if he actually does, but you want to know an actor who makes me think that he does do method acting? Johnny Depp. I don't know if he actually does, but Johnny Depp would be like the exact example of someone who in my opinion probably does
Oh
do
yeah,
method acting.
he definitely did. There's a story about that. In fact, during the filming of the, I don't know if he's been a method actor his entire career, but specifically as Jack Sparrow for Pirates of the Caribbean, he one of the methods he used for acting is that he was always in a hot sauna in between takes, um, so that he could have the feeling of, kind of being. Well, he wanted to be kind of dehydrated. He kind of wanted to be slurry. He wanted to kind of wobble a lot and kind of not have a really good sense of balance, because that's what happens to people, pirates and sailors who are in the ocean all the time, is that their sense of balance gets skewed and they're always wobbly. So he wanted that effect, and he got that effect from being in the sauna a lot. So I there's definitely there's a fine line between being a method actor and method acting, using
Yeah.
certain tools and techniques to improve a performance, and you know, completely erasing your identity as a human being to invest yourself into that character. That's what um give me his name. Dark Knight Joker, Heath Ledger. That's what Heath Ledger did
Heath
for
Ledger.
the Dark Knight Joker. Is that he completely invested his entire life. I mean, acting is a hard job. Your 9 to 5 is studying, and you're studying this character that you're going to be in for anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes of a film that you're in, and you have 3 to 6 months to prepare for the month that you shoot. And your 9 to 5 is reading and studying about that character, learning languages, getting physically fit, doing whatever you need to sell the illusion that you are that character, because filmmaking is movies are a form of escapism. And the only way to really make money as a movie is to offer that escapism in the highest possible extent. And you need to sell the illusion, and that's why good acting is so important, because if it's bad acting, then people are going to switch off to something that they think is more valuable, because people want to be convinced of fiction. They don't want to watch fiction that is, bad and doesn't sell the illusion. So I think he did a great job, and the whole can of worms of method acting, and if it's if it should be done or not, because it is pretty unhealthy. But that's art, because it's for the sake of art that you do those kind of things. That's what
Yeah,
makes
I
art
mean,
art.
I would just say that, like, if you have a choice to do it and you choose to do it, I mean, I can understand you saying that, like, well, if everyone does it, or if it's set as a standard, then everyone would have to do it, and that would take away normal acting and whatnot. So, like, maybe you would push to not do it because of that. But I mean, like, isn't the goal to get the best movies out? Like, I mean, like, to find the best actors. If you can find someone who's good at method acting and that creates their best work and they want to
Well,
do it, and
there's a hierarchical system with what I understand about the acting profession. You don't need every actor to have that level of commitment, because you look at extras. There are people whose full-time job is to be in the background of movies as an extra. You don't necessarily need to be a method actor using all of these techniques and stuff to convince the audience that you're walking across the street. And then you have sitcoms that are in a similar vein. Even one-dimensional characters. The reason that you method act is so that you convince the audience that you are more than just what the lines you say are. And that's the whole thing about acting, is if I read off a cue card, or if I read off a script and I say the words, they're just words. I'll be robotic if I just say, oh, Sally, you hurt my feelings. But if I add emotion behind it, if I add all of these different intricacies and spitting and all of this kind of stuff to convince you that I'm actually mad at Sally, then that's acting. But you don't need that level of acting in every single role of every single movie and every single TV show. In fact, you don't want that in side characters. You mainly only want to explore the main character, and the main character to have that kind of dimensionality. And very rarely you'll have the main character be, not flat and multidimensional, and then you'll have the villain do the same thing. This is what we have in the Dark Knight trilogy, or the Dark Knight trilogy was specifically the Dark Knight. Is you have a villain and a hero that are not flat and are very complicated. And that kind of stuff takes time, it takes money, it takes resources, it takes planning. And, you can't really expect on $100,000 budget for a short film to have that kind of skill be applied to each and every one of your actors. So there's a market and a time and a place for the regular job of acting. And not everyone needs to be this Christian Bale level artist, because film is an art, but it's also a business. So you make artistic statements, but also sometimes you just take jobs, you take gigs as an extra just to pay the bills, and that's perfectly fine too. Not every movie needs to be a super crazy artistic statement, and I know that's not the point that you're making. I'm just going off in general.
Yeah. Method acting has created some of my favorite stuff, so I just know that I like it a lot. But I completely get what you're saying too, because you're right, and that is actually just going along with my point too, because that's what I'm basically saying is like, so when it comes to the morals of whether or not we should quote unquote do method acting, my response would just always be like, well, if they want to do it, let them do it. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like you're freaking holding a shotgun up to their head and telling them to do this or you're never going to get another this business again or something like that. Like, I mean, if it was like that, then I get it. But like, if you need your character to have someone who's going to give it their all and you need someone who's going to method act, it shouldn't, in my opinion at least, maybe it's just layman's and I don't know the deeper complexities of what bad could come from this idea, but then you should be able to try to hire for a method actor, you know what I mean? And you shouldn't be pressured to not you shouldn't be pressured to not use method acting if that's what you think your character needs, and the person you hire is willing to do it.
Well, yeah, that's the main argument against. There's a whole argument against method acting, and that's how far is too far. Because directors have a responsibility with their actors. Their directors help make sure that the actors are taken care of. They're fed. They're getting what they need. They're getting what they need. They're going with what the story should say, and the director, from my understanding, has control over how far an actor goes with committing to a character. And the big potential problem with method acting is what happened to Heath Ledger. Heath Ledger got super depressed. He didn't go insane or crazy or whatever playing the Joker, but the character was so dark that he became super depressed, and he ended up overdosing accidentally on antidepressants and other drugs and stuff. So as a director, do you allow someone who's in your care to go that hard into a character to potentially harm themselves? Should that be legal? Should that be advised? Should you morally step in and say, hey, you don't need to go on a diet of tuna and water for 6 months for this project. Just try to focus on the dialogue and all that kind of stuff. It can be pretty fishy territory, and that's why I say like method acting can be very dangerous, and that's why it deserves recognition, and that's it's the peak of the art form of acting for sure. But there's a certain level of danger that comes with it that you got to be really careful of, and it may or may not be advisable in most roles.
And that all I'm perfectly fine with, especially the way you just summed it up right there. Like, use it when it's needed. You don't need to be using it for fucking an Owen Wilson movie or something, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
but like the way I just wanted to say that the way I see it is like you said, it's like the peak of what you would want in terms of commitment from your actor. And like the way I see it is like it's like someone doing a dangerous job uh in real life. Like, the employer's job is to make sure that you're okay, but that job that is super dangerous is still there and available. And so that's all I'm saying is that they definitely, even if it is a little bit like scary, You know, people might die even, but you're not going to get rid of the oil rigs or something. You know what I mean? People die every year in oil rigs. That's a really dangerous job, but you're not going to just get rid of them. You
Right.
gotta like, it's their choice. They know what the pay or the problems are. You got to do your job and making sure that you're trying your best to take care of them as well. And that, you know, like you said, tell them, hey, you don't really need to do this if you want to. Need any help or this, that, and the other thing, you know, just keep me posted and all that. I love your commitment to my character, but you don't need to die for it.
Right.
But that might be what happens, just like with fighting, you know? Nobody goes into the boxing ring and thinks that they're going to kill someone, but it has happened. And that doesn't mean we're going to get rid of boxing.
Yeah, just it's an interesting way to look at acting because acting is a very complicated. All art form is super complicated and can't really be regulated. There's no real way to stop an actor from going potentially too far into a character. Like at least on oil rigs, the risk is there and it's mentioned and you're dealing with it every single day. But with acting, it's so varied, like the kind of characters that you play and the the darkness that some of them can lead you to. Because again, it's you're selling an illusion. If you're playing a character on TV that's suicidal, and you want to do the best possible job possible, then you need to become a person that is suicidal because it shows on your face if you have those thoughts and ideations, and that's what convinces people that that character that you're playing is actually feeling those emotions, and that is, you know, problematic and dangerous, and not all acting is that. But you know, I like method acting, of course, and think it should be tolerated, and I don't know if there should be legislations or anything. My guess is probably shouldn't, but you know, it's an interesting field.
I just don't. I maybe this is a little bit hard, but like I just feel like there can't be that many people who are being negatively impacted by method acting that would need that level of regulation. Like that governmental encroachment should never be the way that you deal with these sorts of things. I don't know how often people are dying of method acting for whatever reason, or even you could like say died while method acting, because you can't really say, like, do we know for sure that Heath Ledger wasn't dealing with depression before he took the Joker's role and all that? You know what I mean? Like, does anyone actually know that? I'm gonna go ahead and guess no. So like, just to rule those people out that might be saying that, let's just say died while method acting. If it wasn't due to like a heart attack or something, but even let's just say include that. That still can't be more than like, I don't even know. It's got to be less than 5 people a year. I feel like I don't like it. The last person I even heard of dying while acting was fucking Heath Ledger. Not literally wow, but because of, or heard, you know, had anything to do with it. Outside of that crazy situation where that actor shot the girl because she thought, or he thought the gun was not loaded. Somehow a
Yeah,
loaded gun got
it's
on set.
Alec Baldwin shooting the. I
Yeah.
forget if she was the cinematographer. I think she was the cinematographer. She was behind the camera, and he shot her because the gun was loaded, and he for some reason thought it wasn't loaded, and everyone thought it wasn't loaded. And I think he got away with it. I don't think he went to jail or anything for it. So I
I
think it was
just
just
don't
an
see
accident.
how, why would you ever have, like, you can get guns that are realistic looking that don't even have like real
It's all
firing a
about the
bullet capability.
authenticity, the real. You need the real thing.
Yeah, well, you can get the real thing without it fucking killing someone, and it wouldn't look any different for your movie. Matter of fact, it probably would have looked more realistic.
Right.
I don't know. That is honestly the most careless situation I've ever heard. I can't even imagine how, like, the lack of care on that whole situation is just crazy. And honestly, I don't like, at first, I think when I first heard about that, I was kind of happy that Alec Baldwin didn't get in trouble because it really wasn't
No.
his fault. But at what point is Alec Baldwin not a grown man picking up a thing that looks like a gun, aiming it at someone who isn't even an actor, and pulling the trigger?
Right.
Like, what the fuck? Like, what are you, a 12-year-old boy? Trying to squirt someone with a fucking squirt gun? Like, what the fuck did he think was gonna happen? Like, I don't understand. Like, why did that situation happen at all? Like, is what I need to know.
Well, I
Were they
don't think
having
that it
like an
was.
argument?
No, I think it was for a scene. It was one of those kind of like front-on close-ups of a cowboy, and the cowboy just like
Oh,
pulled up
and
his
she
gun
was
and
just like
shot. Yeah, it was an
off to
actual
the side or something.
yeah, and it was an actual scene that he was shooting. It wasn't like a misfired accident sort of thing. But I really don't know how they do the practical effect of guns. I don't know if they put like certain blanks in them that shoot out that have a little spark or whatever, but they I they would have tried to do something like that, but then for some reason there was a live round in it, and
And that's what I'm saying. How the fuck could there have been a live round anywhere near that situation?
yeah, I have no idea.
The
The
round
prop
should have
guy was
been
just not
marked.
putting the round in there. You should have been the prop guy to not do that.
Yeah, I mean, I keep thinking about it, and I'm like, honestly, I should really look into that, because like, that is just like, to anyone who knows like gun safety in any aspect, and I'm not even someone who's shot a fucking gun. I just am someone who's like really fascinated by them, and like has watched a lot of videos about it and shit like that. And so I have a pretty good knowledge base, but like, so my point is that even me, someone who's never even shot a gun, I can tell you right now the safety precautions you would take to make sure that this would never happen, ever. And the first safety precaution would be to teach your actor to not fucking point a gun at someone, even if they are off screen. As a director, it is your job, like you say, to make sure everyone is safe. That means that there should never be a human body downrange of any firearm. If you need to get a head-on shot, we live in 2020 fucking 6. You have the capability of using a fucking robot. And if you can't afford it, then you certainly can't afford to shoot someone over it. So have them stand off to the side a little bit and ruin your angle or something. But there should never, ever, ever be a firearm pointed at something you do not intend to kill. And that is exactly what would have been, it should have been taught to everyone on any stage, any movie scene. I can't think of the stage, I guess, movie stage. I don't know what the hell it would be called. But there should never ever be anyone downrange of a barrel of a gun, especially one that you're trying to use live ammunition to make look stick. So you're not using real ammo. At least you shouldn't be. You're using blanks. But even then, this is why you shouldn't fucking put anyone downrange of a gun. If you really need the real life shit, how about we use some real life safety precautions? Like,
yeah, and that's
say what you want about Alec Baldwin. He had his own problems there, sure, but this really lies on the director and not making sure that everyone knew about very basic safety precautions.
that's the thing about people forget how dangerous filmmaking really is. And it's not just dangerous because there's pyrotechnics and, planes and all sorts of stuff, but it's dangerous because no one is ever focused on really more than one thing. The thing with filmmaking
Yep.
is with filmmaking crews, they're a brigade. They have roles, and they're and it's such an intensive brigade that each of these roles can't focus on anything else. The reason there's a director is because the people that are focused on lighting, the people that are focused on the cameras, the actors that are focused on their acting, the reason there's a director is because you need someone to be the mock audience. The director on set is the mock audience. They're the ones that, get to say that performance felt fake, or that doesn't really go with what was already established in the character before, or that delivery was a little weak. The director is the mock audience. And the reason you have a director whose sole job is to make sure that the actors are doing service to their characters is because every single other person on set, up to 30, 40, 50 people, are focusing all of their time and attention in the super fast, high stress environment where you need to get all of your shots done in, anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks, in multiple different locations with permits and contracts and all sorts of stuff. I mean, there was a story I learned in film school. I should know the name of it, but roughly there was this film that was being shot on a train track, and they were just so focused on what they were trying to do that they didn't notice an oncoming train, and it ended up killing someone. Because, that kind of stuff just happens. And it happens not necessarily because they're being careless, but because they're being careless about that thing. They're not being careless about making sure that everything's in focus and making sure that everyone's taken care of with their food and everything. You can't, no matter what, you're going to have accidents like that. And it's a tragedy. And you need, safety when you have these giant, 1,000-pound lights that can fall on anyone's head at any point in time and kill them. You have to have proper safety precautions. And, it's just when there's not someone there, double, triple, quadruple checking to make sure that, the real guns that they use for certain scenes aren't mixed with the fake guns and all that kind of stuff with the live rounds. If you don't have a standard operating procedure for that kind of stuff, you're going to have crazy accidents like that. Before we're getting around time here, I just want to get to closing thoughts of the movie and what we would rate it and how we enjoyed it. Rotten Tomatoes, the biggest reviewing service for film. Critics gave it 82%, which is actually pretty surprising to me, because these kind of movies, they make the critics not really enjoy them most of the time because they can be seen as pretty controversial. Audiences gave it a less than what the critics gave it. The audiences gave it 71%. And I'd say I like this movie a lot. I think it does. I think every decision that's made is made with care and is interesting. And I think, one of my favorite decisions that they made was early on in the movie. They start first they show the mock trailers, which I thought was absolutely brilliant and hilarious. But they moved from that to making this Vietnam scene, which was also hilarious. But in that scene, they have, certain things that happen to it, and we feel like they're real, but, it's just a movie or whatever. And then it does a hard cut to behind the scenes of all the crew behind the camera. And then that just naturally snaps the audience into a reality. The movie bounces back and forth between a hyper satire, super parody movie, and then an actual realistic movie with actors who aren't just, enunciating their words a certain way. And in when we come back to reality, that sequence where they blow up the first giant explosion of Vietnam, that the guy, whatever the pyrotechnics guy did, where he just blew up the forest right behind them. we know as an audience, not only can we see the explosion and be convinced that, oh, that's a big explosion, it's real, but we also know for a fact, and the illusion that it's real and that was a real explosion that actually happened and that had this catastrophic effect on the characters in the story, that's further emphasized by the fact that we saw the fiction side of it just seconds before in the parody that they were trying to make. And that kind of jump from, this kind of movie reality period to actual reality in the story was really, I think they did it in a really satisfying way where they showed the back and forth, and I thought that was fun. And if those kind of decisions, this whole movie I think is really well written and smart. I think Jack Black's character is probably, the way that they handled some of his lines and stuff is probably my least favorite character in the movie. I still like a lot of what he does and laughed quite a bit times, but I like how he represents like the kind of crackpot, drug addicted side of the industry, which there definitely is one, especially in the acting community. And I like that, but he wasn't awesome. He wasn't my favorite. The Vietnam storyline when they got captured was interesting, but I would probably give it I'd probably give it a 90%. It's not the perfect movie, but I like it a lot, and I think it does a lot of things that I think are perfect, and I think are some of the funniest lines I've heard in a long time. I don't know if you agree with that or where you would put it in your level of enjoyment from 0 to 100.
Yeah, I was thinking about it while you were talking, and my score is gonna be definitely off from yours. But again, I don't. This is in no way trying to say anything bad about Tropic Thunder. I
Yeah, just personal
enjoyed
opinion.
the movie. Yeah, I enjoyed the movie a lot. I think I'd put it at 78 because at the end of the day, it was a comedy movie. But was it the funniest movie I've ever seen? I don't think so. Was I dying the whole time, or did I ever die at a certain part? We're laughing a lot, real heavy. No, it was just a real good, funny movie that made me laugh multiple times. But I didn't ever get to the point of I was nearly crying, something like that. Uh, so it's not the best comedy movie I've ever seen, but it also has a pretty deep message behind it that is executed really well. And then you look at all the other things executed really well, like you mentioned all the throughout what you were saying and whatnot. And I agree with all that. So I feel like a really good place for me would be a 78 because I feel like there's a lot when we're talking about comedy movies and how funny they are specifically for me. uh I feel like there's got to be a lot of more room above where this could be. And I'm not saying that that's bad. You heard me. I chuckled, laughed a lot at nearly all throughout the entire movie. Oh, you know what? Actually, I'm forgetting about the see. You know what? Just because I just remembered uh Tom Cruise's character and how funny he was, I'm moving it up to 85 and
Hell
I'm
yeah.
locking it in there. We're at 85% Michael score. Uh I enjoyed the movie a lot. The controversy behind it with Robert Downey it doesn't affect me at all. Maybe my girlfriend would be upset about it, but I just it's not my place to be upset for it if Robert Downey Jr. was in any action. If it was done poorly, then it would be different. But it was done as perfectly as it literally have been, in my opinion. So
Yeah, I agree.
good movie.
You bring up a good point about comedies in general and just any media that we consume in general, is that what's the point of it existing and does it appeal to its target audience the best? And if it's a comedy, then you'd want it to be a great comedy, which is defined by giving you the most amount of laughs possible. And obviously, film is an art form, and it's all subjective. And my 85 or your 90 or whatever is whatever to most people, and it's not necessarily right or wrong. Some people could watch this movie and think that it is absolutely just not funny at all and give it a 0, and they would be just as right as you and me, because it's all about, did it serve you as a story, and do you think it could have served you more based on what you like? And you mentioned that as a comedy, it wasn't the funniest comedy that you've ever seen, so it didn't serve you to some of the degrees of some of the other comedies that you've seen. I am notorious, and I'll state it here for once and for all, that I don't like comedies. I'm not a comedy guy. In fact, most movie critics aren't comedy guys, because I feel like out of all the genres, comedy can be kind of like the cheapest, especially when you get like potty humor kind of movies, because it's just, I don't know. Comedy's really hard. I like a very calculated, smart kind of comedy, kind of like Jimmy Carr, British humor, just like really eloquent and smart. I don't really like slapstick comedy that much. I mean, we watched The Mask one time, and I thought that the style and the directing and the story was cool. Just the comedy itself wasn't my favorite, because I'm not the biggest Jim Carrey slapstick fan. But I don't like this movie necessarily because I think it's the funniest movie of all time. As a comedy, I appreciate it more for its message and its drama components, but I am willing to concede that that's not really the point of it. I mean, it's a comedy first and foremost, and it should really be judged as a comedy. And I thought it was funny. It's definitely not the funniest movie I've ever seen, but in terms of its message, I thought it was fun. But yeah, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I do want to say real quick, just to validate what you said there. Last comment from me. You're absolutely right. For a comedy, it has a much deeper message than most other comedies. Like, you're not going to watch Ted and come out of it, Ted, with a deep, appreciation from some sort of, I don't know, social value or whatnot. You know what I mean? This
Right.
movie, actually, you did come out of it, but, you're not going to watch Ted and be like, wow, that was really something deep.
That really made me give me a unique perspective about life that I didn't really think of before. But yeah, I think it would be cool to jump back and forth between, because it'd be not fair to call you a war guy. I don't know how else to say it. You enjoy like combat sports, and then you enjoy history of war. You're not a warmonger. So it'd be
I
cool
am
to
a dictator.
it'd be cool to bounce back and forth between combat sports movies. I know we wanted to watch Creed 2 with your girlfriend and all sorts of stuff. I think you would really like maybe the Karate Kid movies. I don't know if I know you're a mixed martial arts fan, but I don't know how much you know about specifically karate. But the Karate Kid movies are really good. At least the first one. It's directed by the same guy that directed the first Rocky movie, John G. Avildsen. And I think that would be a good movie to do eventually. But then I definitely want to see some more World War II movies and stuff like Black Hawk Down, because I appreciate your insight on like the weaponry and equipment and all that kind of stuff. I find it fascinating.
Yeah, and I just so happen to have so many YouTube channels that I follow. Like, I'm not like a literal expert, but I guess I would say I'm like an expert for casuals.
Right, yeah, casual expert.
Yeah, I'm a casual expert. And I would say that goes the same for MMA and combat sports. Like, I know it pretty damn good. I could tell you everything they're doing and what it means and what it would accomplish and whatnot, but could I do it? No, not even close. But I just wanted to make sure I said that, so I don't have stolen valor. No stolen valor here, guys.
No stolen valor.
I am not a former UFC champion.
You would have fooled me.
Thank you for listening to Both Sides. What movie do you want us to review next? Let me know and I'll credit you in your username. Like and follow if you enjoyed this podcast, and to stay notified of future reviews. Remember, your right to your opinion matters, whether you're an expert or not. Peace out.